Thank you so much for coming. Hello, Book. Hello, Jack. Hello, Hand. Hello, Star. Draconic, I'll say because the other star will come in. Hello, Diamond. Hello, Chocobo. Hello, Inky. Hello, Pug. Hello, Death's Head. Hello, Kaiju. Oh, Kotaro. Hello, Kotaro. Hello, you guys. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming.
It's so good to see all of you. Hello.
We have missed you. Thank you for understanding that we totally spaced on this last week.
It was so funny because I'm sitting there like, got a lot more free time today than I remember having. Oh well, I guess it's nothing.
Spoilers, it wasn't nothing. Let me turn Raya up here. So glad Writer-san was like, so when was the magic panel?
That was yesterday. Whoops.
Haha, in our dreams. I hope everyone is doing well. As I'm sure most of you know, tonight is a workshop on creating a magic system. I'm glad you spaced. I didn't have time last week. Yeah, neither did we, it turns out.
Funny how that works out.
I'm glad it did work out. I know a few people are at Fan Fusion, but they can watch the VOD, so this is nice. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying Hail Mary. Yeah, the book is good. I liked the movie more. I know that's a weird thing to say. Oh, you're already home from the con. Yay! It does work out. That's perfect. We told Aragon just to carry around like an iPad and just show us off like at the con. Like, here we go. Everyone can watch.
These are my favorite authors.
I know it's heresy, but like Strat is just such a better character in the movie, and it was nice not having so much fucking magic. I'm sorry, magic. Oh my god, math. So much math. I'm reading and talking at the same time.
Yeah, Strat's a lot more humanized in the movie. The book also has a tendency to, yeah, like she said, there's a lot of math, and it doesn't really pull the same thing that The Martian did with the whole like, oh, well, here's the explain it like I'm 5 explanation. He doesn't really do that. So, yeah, and this is coming from 2 people who read the book first. I actually did prefer the movie.
It's good. It's a good book. I just thought that the movie took it and like shined up the areas that didn't really hit right for me personally. So I thought they did a really great job. If you mean Death's Head by like Strat, she comes off more as human for sure than she did in the book.
She's still pretty domineering, like she's still in control of the whole deal. And it still follows pretty much exactly how it does in the book, but yeah, she's a lot more human.
Jack, I was Googling a lot of stuff as I was reading, like, I know the words he said, but I'm not really sure what they mean in this context, so time to look it up and check out all these sciencey things, and what the hell am I even looking at here? But anyway, let's get the workshop rolling. As always, it's super chill, so if you have questions, please don't be afraid to ask and we will answer them. This is very laid back. We will be here until it's over, so there's no time constraint or people kicking us out like how cons work. So yeah, let's get started. What is your favorite magic system? We'll actually talk about a couple magic systems that we like in the slideshow, so we'll go over them. That's a good question. As anyone who has been to a panel knows, or a workshop, I am Kat, or Links on Discord, and this is Rai. and we have been working on Everyone's a Cat Girl since 2021. I just started releasing the Chronicles of Phelan Sahira this year, and as well as Trails and Stales, and Rai just started releasing Dynamis on Patreon.
Necromancer will come out next month as well.
Actually, we have Necromancer, his Buried in Scarlet Necromancer is going to come up here just because it's a really intricate magic system and it's different than anything else we've written. So we brought it up for examples so that we can talk about it a little bit as well. So let us start at the very, very beginning. What is a magic system, Rai?
A magic system really can be described in a lot of different ways. A magic system, to me, is a supernatural force that characters within the story can call upon in order to solve complex problems. Examples of magic systems that aren't strictly magic would be, for example, the Force from Star Wars, or psychic ability. I also consider those to be magic systems, depending on the complexity.
Those are good examples. Now, when we're talking about magic systems, you usually hear two terms. You hear hard magic system and soft magic system. So in a hard magic system, we're looking at a lot of rules and limitations to the system, and usually like very specific things that spells do or can accomplish. With a soft magic system, I called it vibe casting, and Rai was like, I love this, so we kept vibe casting. Soft magic systems don't really have very many rules, and it feels like the character can just kind of pull out whatever they need at that point in time to make things work. I really love the Magicians, but I felt like that was more of a soft magic system. They didn't have anything like permanently there or that was repeated. It was just kind of whatever they needed at the time.
To jump off that a little bit, the Force is also an example of a soft magic system where it basically just does whatever the hell the plot needs it to do at that time. Soft magic systems to me are usually more whimsical in nature, where they play more off of the mystique and the mystery behind the art. Lord of the Rings, for example, is also a soft magic system with the way Gandalf solves problems. Nobody really quite knows how his magic works, so he's almost kind of an ethereal being to a lot of people.
Magical bullshit is right. Soft magic system is where you're going to find a lot of magical bullshit. You'll find some in hard magic systems, but usually it's in the case of the main character somehow broke the system and now they're finding out ways to cast new magical bullshit that has never been seen before. And you see this a lot in isekais and lit RPGs. So it can start as a hard magic system and then they're like, but what if I do this? And then all of a sudden like it's broken and it goes kind of more into soft.
And then, does every fantasy story need a magic system? Say it with me. No. No, it doesn't.
No, it really doesn't. There's like low fantasy and high fantasy. You'll hear that a lot, where low fantasy is usually, oh, no real magical creatures and not so much magic, but the world is completely different from here, and there's still like fantasy elements sometimes, like alchemy or
I think a good example is the Avatar movies. So there's not really any magic in the Avatar movies, but it's a very mystical world. It's very fantasy. It's about a bunch of blue people living on this beautiful planet and humans coming to invade it. That is very fantastical, but there's no real magic to it.
Oh yeah, and like Fern Gully, the movie that Avatar is based off of. It's true. Yeah, you've got fairies. Or like a lot of fairy tales actually are all fantasies without magic, like real magic. Like you're looking at Hansel and Gretel or Cinderella, who has the fairy godmother, and then like that's it. So a fantasy does not need magic to keep it standing, and it doesn't need it to make a good story. It's totally up to you and what you want to do with your world.
To clarify on that real quick, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, when we say magic system, we're talking about a system that you've created with magic. We're not saying that magic is completely excluded. just to clarify that. Just so that everybody knows what she meant by like fairy godmother and fairy tales. Like there's magic in those stories, but there's no magic system, if that makes sense.
Like you can't sit there. I mean, you could, but the fairy godmother is not going to have like a spec sheet of here are the things that she can do, because all we really know she can do is give Cinderella a nice dress and turn a pumpkin into a coach. So
that's it. She's just a plot device.
That's all she is. So unless you could apply that to like the rest of the world somehow and really weave that into the narrative, like that would be a magic system. But if it's just she showed up and was a plot device, then not so much. That's just the magic is in the world, but it's not in its own system. Yeah, exactly, Diamond. No specific spell casting or like spell rules. It's just kind of there's magic things there. Just like Ferngully, like there's little fairies and he gets shrunk down and goes and lives with the fairies for a while, but there's no real magic system. There's just magic in the world. So there are 3 things that your magic system really needs to get up on its feet. The first is the source. So where does your magic system come from? And we're going to, or your source of magic, where is it coming from? We're going to break each one of these down on its own slide. So don't panic if like we don't mention specific things yet. This is just kind of an overview.
And then your second point is going to be limits. Why hasn't it taken over the world? Or if it has, how does one defeat it? A magic system is defined, in my opinion, by what its limits are. And like she said, we'll go over that a little bit.
And third, you need a purpose. There needs to be a reason for magic to be in your story. It should serve some kind of purpose and forward the narrative somehow, and we will go over that too. Same example with the fairy godmother. Once upon a time had Rumpelstiltskin be the fairy godmother and have his rules be magic comes with a price. Yeah, Rumpelstiltskin is his own story too, and I think demanding her firstborn was also in like the original OG fairy tale.
What I understand from Once Upon a Time anyways, Rumpelstiltskin is the devil, the angel, and everything that makes that entire plotline work. Not one scene would go by without him being mentioned.
I think I watched a season and a half and I had to stop because of that.
Pretty much, yeah. Every time I would walk in, my mom was watching. I'm like, do they ever stop talking about this guy?
No.
All right, options for the sources. So one really popular option is an energy that surrounds all living things. That's usually referred to as mana, chakra. A lot of you who have read our Kakarot novel know it as Miana. And an energy that would surround all living things is a very, very easy thing to tap into because it surrounds everybody at all times. So you can create finite energies, you can create infinite energies, you can make it so that it surrounds people, you can make it so that it's within the person. They may have to tap into a specific location in order to draw upon it. Those are just a few examples.
Next and I put the source with the S in the end because you can have multiple sources. Like it doesn't have to be, I must pick one of these and this is the only way that magic is going to happen. Like you can weave in different elements and different ideas. So second would be a separate location or entity that links to the world. And we used our own personal examples on this one. The first one would be the wall with Sahira. The wall is like where it cuts off between the mortal plane and the spiritual plane where demons and celestials roam, but that's where they're pulling their magic from. So it's actually coming out of that. And then we also included Scarlet, which is from Necromancer, and Scarlet came from an external source of, what you said, like it was a war?
Yeah. It's a war that occurred long ago where basically a bunch of creatures from another world caused it to seep into the world. So it's an unnatural source that invaded.
Yeah, so any kind of like something separate from your world that somehow has linked up to it and now it's providing magic.
And then another popular one is an internal source. This can be birthright, essence, pulling from inside. Basically, the concept behind this one is that it's all about the person themselves. So, for example, elves are just magical. Just by their very nature, they're magical. So you'll see in a lot of fantasy where humans visit a bunch of elves, they live for hundreds of years, they know everything there is to know about magic because they draw it from just their very own blood. You might also see this in other stories where only certain people who are born as wizards, witches, warlocks, and so on are capable of using such magic. Otherwise, you have other options as well. You can pull from one's essence, which is commonly referred to as your life force, or just pulling it from inside. You know, it's some sort of internal energy that everybody has. The immediate thing that I can think of is something like chakra from Naruto, where they have to tap into their chakra in order to actually make anything happen, and they've only got a finite amount of it.
Hey Star, thank you so much for the sub. Thank you for coming in. And chakra can also be all living things. It can be both.
Yeah, just to clarify, yeah. A lot of these things, they're gonna kind of interweave between one another, but the base concept between each one is what separates them.
Lots of overlap in magic. Hello, Sel. Thank you so much for coming.
That is such a cute little emote you have there.
All right. Some options for limitation. Why it break? There we go. I clicked off of it. Kiwi asked, would you say there's a point where you can have too much overlap? I think if you can't limit it anymore and everything is just kind of God mode enabled, that's where it's good to pull back, but I'll let Bryce step into that one too.
Yeah, I'll touch on that once we get to the end of this panel.
Okay. So the first limitation, and probably the most obvious, is there's only a certain amount of magic in the world. Make it a finite resource. We just beat Tales of Symphonia, and that's a great example of what's happening. Like, the mana is getting sucked out of the world, so the Chosen has to go and restore it, or else the whole world is going to die. And it makes it so that you can only draw on it so much, you can only use so much, which is going to build a limitation on how much you can cast, who can cast, and if you'll get in trouble by casting.
Any thoughts on magic from items? Yes, absolutely. We will touch on that pretty shortly here.
We will.
We will, because that involves enchantments and us talking about different types of magic, like spells and preparation.
So
go ahead.
Hang on. When we were first making this, I actually brought up magic from items, and I wanted to say that we determined that magic, like, it has to be usually enchanted into the item somehow. So the magic came from either someone else from enchanting it, or it could be a wand that came off of a magical tree, which would mean that the magic is essentially everywhere. But whatever the magic in that item is from still has another source.
Yeah, the item itself is not the source. Something else created it. Limited pools that cause exhaustion, threaten lives, or cause poor technique. This is actually something that I play with a lot with Scarlet and Necromancer. The energy that surrounds everybody is very volatile. Poor technique can kill people. Something very similar happens to one of the characters in the story. I won't say who, but you'll see. And exhaustion is also a very easy way to get around that. So, because anybody who fights in combat, eventually, you know, they exert enough of their energy, their muscles tighten, they get way too tired. You can approach a magic from a very similar aspect. You know, they can start getting dizzy, they can have fainting spells, they can lose concentration. There's a lot of things you can do to play with that.
Oh my goodness, Yoon, hello! Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome in, raiders. Welcome, welcome. We are doing
Welcome in.
a workshop on creating a magic system. Thank you for raiding us, Yoon. You are amazing. We just started. We're only on like slide 3, so you guys have come at a really good time. To catch you up, you need 3 things for your magic system: source, limits, and purpose. And we are on limitations. So you're rated at a good time. Thank you for the follow. You know how to have time to talk. It's so good to have you guys. This is very laid back. We are double blinds. I don't even have to say I'm one half. Like, we are both here.
That's right. You got both halves here tonight. So welcome in. Thank you so much. Good to see you all.
This is where the magic happens. Every time we stream. Hell yeah. Han was saying too much lactic acid in the muscles is bad, but what about too much lactic acid in the brain? Exactly. A lot of magic is mental, and mental fortitude can run very low very quickly. And you can make that limit on a lot. Like, I was playing for a while with witches and wizards that actually like used their own blood and like their own energy, so they didn't live for very long, which we'll talk about in a couple of little stars here. But pools, I think the easiest way to imagine it is if you've ever played a game ever and you've seen an MP bar or a TP bar or a PP bar, whatever the magic points look like, that's your pool. And once you run out, that's it. You can't cast anything else. Hello, you guys. Hello. Is there a chance I could get this slideshow sent to me? Yes, I will send it to you after the workshop is over. Currently playing Elden Ring and looking at my FP bar. Exactly. And once that's gone, you're fucked. So that's a really great way to look at a pool of magic. A lot of times, if it's not a lit RPG, you won't get to see exactly how the pool is. It'll be however the character reacts once the pool starts getting lower, whether that's, like Rice said, exhaustion, fatigue, or if it's actually going to kill them, and like if they run out of magic, that's it. We've seen that too. So mana, other than being a super common concept, is actually a good limitation. It is, and it's okay if you use common concepts. Like, people recognize them, and no one's gonna go, oh, mana again. Like, no one minds. It's totally fine. Like, use mana. Just find some way to limit it. And even if it's, I ran out of mana. Mana has been used for time immemorial.
Yeah, mana's not a bad system. There's a reason a lot of people use it. It's very reliable. It's very easy to control. The limitations speak for themselves. Mana, or any kind of energy that would serve as mana, is perfect. If that's the kind of system you want to go with, then you really can't go wrong with it. Okay, so we have external forces, religious or otherwise, that make it risky or impossible to use. So what I mean by this is there may be a stigma that surrounds spellcasters. Spellcasters may be limited by how much knowledge there is. Perhaps there was a bunch of book burning. Perhaps a religious order doesn't approve of what they're doing. Perhaps they're very few in number. Because of this, it makes it very, very difficult for them to use magic in a practical and everyday sort of manner. Whereas, like, for example, I have the ability to levitate boxes, but if I use that in front of somebody, they're going to call the guard on me and I'm going to be hanged. So that's another way to also incorporate some limitations. It also helps build your world a little bit, build some culture.
I like the external forces one because you can use that in any time period that you're writing in, or any genre really. Like, you can do modern, you can do cyberpunk, you can do fantasy, like old medieval or medieval. It's great because it makes it so your character cannot cast very big spells or else they're going to get caught. So that's a very easy limitation to use for across the board, honestly. All right, so next, limitations on your character's livelihood. So does it affect their age? Does it make them immortal or eternal? Or does it shorten their lifespan? So like I was saying earlier, like a witch that would use her own blood or her own energy is probably not going to live as long as other people. It's going to take a toll on her eventually, especially if she's like losing a lot of blood. There's eternal characters, which means that they can live as long as they can possibly live until someone actually kills them and then they die. And then also, like, does the magic itself affect somebody's age? So if you have like an elf and a human who both have magic, is your human gonna live as long as the elf, or does the elf still live a long time? So how long someone can live can also affect and create a limitation, or it can help take one away if they can live longer than the average person.
And then lastly, lack of limitations can lead to poor power scaling. Limitations are the backbone of your magic system. The magic is important, as is everything else. The source, all of that matters, but the most important factor to a magic system is its limitations. If you don't build any limitations to your system, things get out of hand. Suddenly you have people flying around, destroying whole cities, creating infinite gold. You have all kinds of problems that just really blow your world wide open, and you as a reader will sit there and think, well, I came up with it, why isn't anybody else trying this?
Yeah, so following up too on Kiwi's question of like, is it okay to overlap different sources of magic? Absolutely. You have to be careful on making sure that all of your sources kind of work together, that there's not maybe like one that's greater than the other. So why would you ever pull from the other source? You can have it like as a limitation of certain people can only pull from this source, certain people can only pull from this source, different schools of magic, etc. You just want to make sure that it doesn't lead to, like Raya said, everyone's flying around and burning whole cities down, and like, why wouldn't they? They have the ultimate power, so why not use it?
Nobody's gonna stop them, so use it.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. This magic wand only takes diesel. That's an expensive wand. F. So for the purpose, we thought that we would give you some questions that you can ask yourself instead of just saying like, oh, here are some purposes for your magic. It's just it's an infinite list of reasons why you can put magic into your story, but these are questions on like whether you really need it or if you're just kind of trying to shoehorn it in there. So first off, what is magic doing that technology can't? We talk about this a lot with writing. Magic and technology are always going to go hand in hand. So if you have the technology to do something, generally the magic's not going to matter because everyone else can just do it with technology. It's also important to ask this question on the inverse, like what is technology doing that magic can't? That way you have a good idea of how technologically advanced your society is and where the magic is fitting in.
I agree. And then, what impact does magic have on your culture, your daily life, your religion? Backing up slightly to what I was saying before, people are going to interpret this in a lot of ways. There's always going to be a group of people who don't agree with something, no matter how good intentioned it may be. And magic and technology very easily fit into that. So you can use that to determine like what people's daily lives look like. How does the religion handle it? Are people spooked when they see this kind of thing happen? Does it make them uncomfortable? And you can really play with that depending on how powerful this magic can be, like what its potential looks like.
What about magic technology like in Symphonia? So that's actually a really good example in the limiter that happened because magic technology was sapping the mana so fast that it was going to kill the world. So of course it got nuked into orbit, and then you start in a place that has like zero technology at all. So then that way when you go into the ranches and stuff, you're like, why does everyone have cell phones? Like, it was just very surprising to see when people are outside chopping wood with just chipping axes and can barely stand on their own 2 feet. So Symphonia had really fantastic limiters on magic, which I loved, and kept everything in check on both sides. So you can absolutely have neat magic technology like that. Another great example is Final Fantasy VI, which has some great magic technology and works in magic on the otherwise. Like, so it's cool to combine them. Like, you can absolutely combine magic and technology to create something more powerful. Just again, make sure it's not to the point of, why don't I just walk this thing into the next city, bowl it over, and take over? Next on the list, does everyone have access to magic or only a select few? If so, why? Are we going for like the chosen one route? Is it because only certain people can tune in? Is it because only certain people were infected? It's good to figure out exactly who can actually use your magic and get into the system, and establish why that is, so that way you know where your main characters are going to line up to.
Next we have, do you want elemental magic, physical magic, a lit RPG system, psychic ability? What role does each play in your world? These are all perfectly good examples. These are all fine systems on their own. It's just important to figure out which ones you want to play with and create a nice little web between them.
Sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. Agreed. Yeah, that's why it's very important to sit down and figure out where your technology is and where it lies, and if magic actually needs to be in your system or like is going to play any part at all. Because if you can just like, you know, flick your fingers and light fire, why? I have a blowtorch. Question: what does physical magic mean? When I wrote that, I was thinking of, yeah, augmenting physical ability. So like the skills in a lit RPG, we usually don't quantify that as much as magic, even though it's still drawing upon a magic to give your attack 20% more, or like boost your strength or boost your speed, those kinds of buffs. Or earth bending, yeah, that's also an option. Yeah, water bending, like all the avatar bending would be a good example. But I think that leads into elemental as well.
You can make an argument.
Yeah, it's either or.
You're going to find that there's a lot of overlap in these systems, and that's perfectly fine.
But you could have a whole system that's just based off of, you know, gaining and getting swole and just beating each other out, kind of like JoJo's. You can just do JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and that's your magic system. I cast gun. Yes.
I am totally game.
And then lastly, how does your magic system integrate into your narrative? So this goes with, like, how is this going to affect your characters? You want to have a kind of seamless integration once you reach the point of, here's what my character can do. Okay, cool. So how is that going to affect the rest of your world? How do the rest of the world see him? How does they affect the culture? Does religion, like, do you have religions that think that that's okay, or that would, like, worship him and follow around, etc., etc.?
You have a ton of options for this sort of thing. This is just, that last point is an overall, like, how does magic just affect that character and the characters around them? Like, as just a really off the top of my head example, let's say some lone girl is born from a family of peasants, and I just realized I'm talking about Sahira.
I was gonna say.
So actually, you know what? I'm gonna use Sahira as an example. Sahira's a beautiful example. Sahira is from some backwater town, right? She is a peasant. She's used to really simple farm life. She doesn't know anything about the rest of the world and magic and all this other sort of stuff going on. She doesn't know anything about it. So she is completely out of her realm when she's expected to just suddenly learn magic and expects to know how it works, and she's living among all these nobles, and she has a real confidence issue because she doesn't feel like she belongs there. There are so many things you can do to play with that, to really show what kind of character are we following, how does this affect her, what does she think about the rest of the world, is it good, is it bad? It opens the doors for so many avenues.
I'm flattered that you would use her as an example. Thank you. King asked if there's a different magics, like spiritual and physical only affecting magics. I mean, there can be. Why not? You can do anything you want. Like, it doesn't have to be already established. You can write it literally however you want. If you want a story with nothing but spiritual magic, go for it. If you want it with just physical magic, go for it. And Han said no point writing the 100 points of how the gods affect the cleric's magic if your character is in a different continent without those regions. Yeah, and I mean, that also comes down to what regions are the gods affecting, and do you have to actually, like, validate their existence for that to affect you, or are they affecting you anyway? Are they omnipotent?
If I believe in all of them, does that piss any one of them off, and therefore they what's the word? They take the magic away. Yeah, I'm looking for a word. it'll come to me later. They relinquish. I wanted to say provoke, but no, it'll come to me. Revoke, that was it. Thank you. They revoke my magic because I like the other gods a little bit more than him, so that makes him angry.
We promised to do a religion, like building a religion stream. I don't think we've done it yet, so we'll do a workshop on that. Yeah, at some point, because that's been a big question for how do you build up a religion. So that can definitely be its own workshop. Cleric, you can no longer praise Amaterasu because they were a bitch to me at the Autumn Festival, and I need you to make a statement. Petty gods are petty, for real. Alright, now I can answer Chocobo's question with a couple of magic systems that we really enjoy out in the wild. The first one is the Dresden Files. I feel like the Dresden Files is such a good just introduction to magic. If you have never read a book before with magic, it is so easy to understand and digest. It has perfect limits. It has a great purpose in the story. No one really takes Harry Dresden seriously and keeps asking if he'll do children's birthday parties. It's great.
Yeah, I love the Dresden Files very, very much. And then the next one is Mistborn. Mistborn's magic system is actually one of my favorite systems that I've seen in a book. Basic premise behind it is that select people can swallow ores, and when they swallow these ores, these alloys they call them, you're able to invoke certain abilities. So you can change the direction in which you fall, you can get super strength, super speed, you can pull and push certain types of metals away from you. It makes for some really, really interesting combat. It's one of my favorite systems that I've read in recent memory.
Yeah, one of the reasons I love Dresden is that he has magic all day long, and then he whips out a gun when, like, he knows, like, magic is not going to do shit. This is why I carry the gun. Like,
fuck this.
And I want to say, too, with Mistborn, that I would like to stop that at Mistborn, the first book, and none of the other Mistborn books.
We're not talking about the other two books. We're talking about strictly the first book.
Because it gets into problems, a lot of problems that made me really upset. But the first Mistborn is fantastic. And yes, it shows the effects on culture. It has great world building. There's the nobles. There's the not nobles. There's how they interact. It's great.
You could read just the first Mistborn book and it's a complete story. You don't have to read anything else. It's perfect on its own.
And now, a couple of magic systems that we did not like out in the wild.
Boy, do I have some opinions about Loch Lamora.
So, The Lies of Loch Lamora is an absolutely beautiful book with stunning world building, perfect prose, and fucking bonds mages. And I have never been so angry at a book before, and if you have been in any of my workshop streams where I have brought up bonds mages, you know. But this is the perfect time because we're talking about the magic system. So, bonds mages in Loch Lamora are essentially mercenary mages that you can hire for a lot of money, and the more money you pay, the better the bonds mage you get. Here are the problems with bonds mages. 1, you cannot kill them. So even if you hire a bonds mage, we'll say, I hired a bonds mage to kill Rai. And Rai's like, I'm not having that. So Rai kills the bonds mage.
So now I gotta run from the bonds mage. Go on.
So Rai kills the bonds mage, and now the rest of the bonds mage collective is very upset, and they decide to burn down the city that I live in because they're upset. So that starts the first question of why the hell are they mercenaries to begin with if they can just team up? And there's only like 50, there's not very many bonds mages, but they make it very clear that they will bring down just any society that stands in their way.
They make it extremely clear that they are essentially walking gods.
Which was ridiculous, because again, why are they just taking money? Like, why not just go wipe out everyone and take over the world and show your power and that's it? So that was problem 1. Problem 2, this mofo had a spell in every single just subsection of magic that you can think of. Like, he knew names magic, he knew hexes, he had a bird, so he had like falconry magic. Yeah, I'm glad it's explained in books 2 and 3. I will never touch them because of how upset it made me in book 1. Like, they should have their own government, and it should have been their own government. The other thing that bothered me was the fact that the one in the first book was supposed to be paid a hefty sum of money for what they hired him for, and they sent him there on like a promise. They didn't actually pay him up front, which means that I can ask a bond mage to do literally anything for me. And I mean, the worst that happens is I don't pay him and he kills me, but what I wanted got done. So that's cool.
There's a huge problem here. So you're telling me that I can just be like, oh yeah, I promise I'll pay you. It's all right, no worries. Don't even think about it. Can you just go burn that village down for me, pretty please? And then at that point, I know full knowing that, hey, I'm either going to kill him and the rest of them come after me and kill me, or he's going to kill me. So I can easily just go into that deal knowing full well that, yeah, I'm going to die, but exactly like Link said, well, I got done what I wanted to have done. I got my walking god.
Can you go destroy all of my enemies for 1 bajillion gold? It's fine. I'll have it on a ship for you next week. Like, really, I've got it.
I got an IOU. Here.
It just felt like such a Deus Ex Machina, Deus Ex Bondsmage, I think I was calling it when I was reading, and it just pissed me off because everything up to him was so excellent, and that felt like, I need the plot to happen, so here's my Bondsmage, she's gonna be here to make the plot happen.
It was extremely frustrating, and it is the prime example that her and I jump to when we look at a magic character who does too much. The power scaling is completely out of control and whack. I will never read the other books just because of that. Which really sucks because the first 3/4 of the book pretty much are beautifully written. It is an incredibly well-written story, and I would highly suggest it to pretty much anybody. But just be ready for the whole Bondsmage problem.
See, Diamond, that's the thing. You can't run to the next country over. They will find you. They will always find you. As soon as you are marked by a Bondsmage, that's it. There's no escaping them, period.
Oh yeah, they make it very clear. There's no escape. It doesn't matter what you do. Nope. Even if you run to another country, they can teleport. They can teleport, they can fly, they can do anything they want. You cannot escape a Bondsmage.
You can't kill them because every Bondsmage will come and kill you, even though, if that's what they were hired to do. That's tough luck, buddy.
It reminds me of like the 6-year-old who goes, no, I'm invincible. No, you can't kill me.
The DM's railroading the story again for real. I am sick of you people. Here, deal with this. Like, that's what it felt like.
That's a great way to describe it, yeah.
So I'll let Rye talk about the Stormlight Archive.
So, Stormlight Archive is something I've been reading for a while. I'm about halfway through Rhythm of War, which is the 4th book in the series. So credit where credit is due. The books are great. I do enjoy the writing for the most part. The magic system is actually kind of terrible, and I'll explain why. So there's a force that encompasses the world, which creates stormlight. And this stormlight can be held within the world's main method of commerce, which is usually like little types of stones and gems. Well, one of the characters, Kaladin, learns how to harness stormlight and gain access to the numerous abilities that it gives him. A few other characters also learn throughout the story on how to gain stormlight. But to basically give you the TLDR version, it essentially just allows you to heal any wound and fly. And that's pretty much it. It allows you to fly, heal any wound. You can do a couple other neat tricks with it, but that's essentially what it does.
You can lash yourself to ceilings.
You can lash yourself to certain directions.
That's it.
That's pretty much it. They do explain that there are other schools apparently of magic, But the worst part about Brandon's writing, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, is that he never shows you like the intricacies of how this magic is used or where these orders come from or any of that sort of stuff. Every time a new book starts, it time jumps quite a bit, and these orders just kind of, they're there now. That was actually one of the first things I noticed about Rhythm of War when I started it, is these orders are now just here. So these orders appeared somewhere between the end of the third book and the beginning of the fourth book. And I had a really hard time with that. And there's not really just a whole lot that you can do with this magic. And one of my biggest pet peeves about a magic system in general is once the characters start flying. Once the characters fly, I tune out. I'm done. No, you're basically talking about Superman now. You're just talking about a bunch of superheroes flying around doing figure eights and showing off. And I can't stand that shit. That part, I will admit, is a personal peeve of mine. But flight changes the game tremendously. It suddenly, hexes don't matter. Elemental magic doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. Speed doesn't matter. None of that matters. Any of your physical or magical prowess doesn't matter, because I can simply fly away. And I have a problem with that. So that's just my rant out of the way.
I think we've kind of talked about it too. Something that Brandon Sanderson does that we don't really care for is that he takes these magic systems that's limited to a certain number of people, and then at some point, without fail, everyone is going to get the ability to access this magic system. It happened in Stormlight. It happens later, like in the third Mistborn book. Like, he doesn't like to keep it just to the people that he started with. And I don't know, like Bryce said, maybe that's my own pet peeve, but it just feels like we took all the limiters off and hooray, get going.
So I'm glad you brought up bondsmithing, because Dalinar is my favorite character. I love Dalinar. I think he's a very nuanced, very complicated character, and hilariously enough, his son Adolin is my second favorite character. I fucking hate Shallon, just gonna say that. However, there's so much you can do with bondsmithing. Like when he does it at the end of the book 3, and he's able to just call that out of nowhere, I'm like, oh wow, this is a really powerful thing he can do. And he never uses it. I never see it get used. Like, I'm a little over halfway through Rhythm of War. I'm like, okay, when's he gonna start actually making good use of this? And he doesn't. It's just, no, let's just get Stormlight and Kaladin and get actual hundreds of people flying in the air fighting all of the, I forget what they're even called, like the other Forsaken, the damned ones. It's been a long time since I cracked the book open, so I don't remember their names. But it's not special anymore. Exactly, yeah, it's not special anymore. And that really takes the magic out of it. It really does.
Let's see, I'm gonna scroll up a bit. The big problem with Rhythm of War is it's a sequel to an intermediate book, which Sanderson didn't write. A dozen plot lines for book 3 are dropped, and a dozen more are materialized from the middle of the sci-fi. Right. What intermediate book?
So I think what he means by that, by intermediate book, is it assumes a whole bunch of the reader to just kind of understand, oh, things are happening, but there's no way to actually piece them together because it feels like there's a book missing in between.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I actually went through Arcanum Unbound and read the Lift story, which was very underwhelming. I liked a couple more stories in that one better than the Lift one, but yeah, he kind of hits the same beats, and he also has a tendency to make the first 3/4 of the book very fluffy, and then the last quarter of the book is really where everything happens, which can be really hard when the book is like 16 to 1800 pages long and you're just kind of sitting around waiting for something to happen.
That was the most frustrating part, I think, especially about book 3 and 4, is he spends time describing all these environments and what people are doing instead of exploring like how the magic works, how it's affecting people, what are they doing that's actually important. It feels like it a lot. I really feel like you could take book 3 and 4 and cut them in half and turn them into one book by themselves.
Flight and teleportation are two really finicky things to get right in a lot of systems. Absolutely agree.
And the Stormlight Archive has both.
I am definitely of the opinion that teleportation needs to be limited to like a certain area where things are set up and not like I can just hop around wherever I want. I'm gonna be in Japan tomorrow. Sam Sykes' book 7 Blades of Black is one of my favorite magic systems. I have not read that book. I will pull it up. I know who Sam Sykes is though.
Yeah, if you're going to introduce flight or teleportation, it has to very, very, very carefully. Because being able to remove any obstacle in your path that you would find through normal means of travel is one of the most game-breaking abilities you can have. Even if you're the weakest person on Earth, the very fact that you can fly or teleport, you can do so much with that. And I take a lot of issue with that. Especially since The Way of Kings, the very first book in the Stormlight Archive, is so damn good. So is the second book. And it really illustrates the common foot soldier's approach to situations. But by about the midpoint, maybe second half of book 2 and then most of book 3 and 4, no. Everybody's flying around, healing impossible wounds. Like, Shalyn gets struck through the brain with an arrow. And no joke, it just reads, "Oh bother," and then she heals it. So you basically can't kill her.
Okay, we're getting a few drop frames, so if we lag out or if you can't hear a few words, just let us know and we'll try and repeat and talk slowly. I don't know, our internet's been really wonky the last couple days. We think they're doing maintenance around, and I don't know if it's that or Twitch. No, it's not your internet. It's getting worse. Should we try and connect to like a different Twitch server, or? I don't want to stop the whole stream. Well, no. Do you guys want to? Can you stay put for like 2 minutes?
Give us just like 2 to 5 minutes to play with it, and we'll be right back.
Just don't leave me.
Seem fine to hand. Okay. Is it improving? Maybe, I don't know.
No.
It's more stable. It says you're fine 98% of the time. Mostly fine. Got it. Okay.
What do you want to do, babe?
Let's keep going. If it gets really bad, they'll tell us, and then we can restart.
Okay. Apologies for the skip. It's not your internet, it's ours. We are the problem. Alright, now we're gonna talk about personal work. Yay, let's do it!
Okay, so now we're going to use our own works to provide examples of how we use sources, limitations, and purposes. So for everyone's a cat girl, this is Miena. It's an external and internal source of energy. All characters have a pool that they can draw from. So for example, as a lot of you know, everybody has Miena points in our story, Everyone's a Cat Girl, and they can draw upon it to use their spells and abilities. Everybody has access to this energy, even the combat classes like Matt and Kailu and Redacted Cat Man. So this is a very clear and cut example of using mana or a type of energy to just fuel everyone's magic.
Alright, so The limitations. The system determines. Oh my gosh. The system determines maximum mana pools for each character. Cat girls have affinities with up to 2 elements. This limits their choices in spells and class. So we made it so that the cat girls can only get up to 2 elements, while the men in the world can access any one of them that they wanted. Rye was really careful about not giving the cat girls like a huge booster in anything, because we had talked about like, oh, do they have claws? Do they have super speed? Can they do super jumps? But if they can, then the men are off to a really nasty start. Like, they already are, because the cat girls know about the world and the defiled and the encroachers, and the men are just at 0. But they'll never catch up. Like, we needed a way for the men to actually catch up to the girls and exceed them at some point.
And then we have the cultural impact and the purpose. So, as a lot of you are aware, necromancy is forbidden in the story. Raven has mentioned it on several occasions. Witch doctors, demonologists, and dark priests are also frowned upon, but are not completely ostracized from society. They just look down upon them because of their dark magics. And then for our purpose, without magic, combating encroachers and defiled would be impossible. Actually impossible. Magic also makes up for a lot of technological inconveniences that they lack. So, since mana points are required for every single ability, yes, even some of Matt's abilities use mana points, they would not be able to fight the encroachers or defiled without access to mana. So, there's its purpose.
Thank you, Kiwi. Yeah, we have a lot of good, I think, limitations on the cat girls. Like, they don't access the system until like 13 to 16, depending. Like, it hits every girl differently, and then that's the only time that they can start like leveling up and starting to like go out in the world and try and kill monsters. And then obviously, like, they're all from their own islands, and they kind of stick to their own islands, so what they know is going to be based on what people are around them know. So Knee Island, like, Kiki and Cannoli are really well versed because their moms were huge in traveling. But for the rest of Knee Island, not a whole lot of them know how to fight. Where if you go to like Ichi, every single one of them will slit your throat if you have enough money. So it can depend, like, culturally, how much these girls know too.
I agree.
And then next up,
This is all you.
yeah, we can both. You help me. This is the Chronicles of Hela and Sahira. This is the bird we don't water, everyone. We don't water the bird.
Water the bird.
Don't water the bird. You're all bad about this. All right. So, the main predominant source of energy in Sahira is derived from the wall, like I had mentioned earlier. So, the wall separates the spiritual plane and the mortal plane, where demons and celestials can be summoned. They essentially harvest the energy on the wall and then delve it out to mortals that they think are good enough to use it. The other means of magic is by essence. So essences are taken from the dead and used in necromancy. So when someone dies, it splits off into their soul and their essence. And essence can be pulled and used separate from energy entirely. So when I was talking about how, oh hey, you can use 2 sets of magic, like Sahira has 2 different kinds of magic.
And then the limitations are very few people have access to magic, making it quite rare. Intent and purpose drive nearly every magical art. Flubbing either of these can have massive consequences. So we've already seen Sahira a few times. The result of not knowing how to control your magic. Sahira, minor spoilers, blows up an orb, which is unheard of because she has no idea how to get control of her magic. Hexes have to be performed and have to be enunciated with perfect clarity and perfect intent and purpose. Otherwise, they just don't work. Straight up. Every single one of the systems in here has some sort of drawback or severe weakness to it that can dismantle it with relative ease. I think she's actually done a fantastic job with implementing those limitations.
Thank you. Star said leveling up in cat girls for the cat girls is basically puberty. No, just opening the system. Like, getting access to the system is when they hit it. Like,
getting access to the system.
it's when they're officially an adult. That's their adultness. Yeah. Also with intent and purpose. So intent and purpose is really helpful for a limitation in Sahira. You need to have both in the majority of the different arts, and you need to have them perfectly clear. So if you don't have a clear intent and purpose when you're doing enchanting, your enchanted item is going to get fucked up. Or another minor spoiler, when Mabori is showing like an enchantment that can actually be cast on a person after the class, his intent is for Sahira to pick up sounds and tones better in the vicinity, but he doesn't like exclude the wall. So all of a sudden Sahira can hear things like across the wall that she's never heard before. So she starts panicking. So even the teacher like messed up his intent at the end of the day. So you have to be very, very careful. The cultural impact, the magic itself is widely accepted throughout the world, but dark and light magic users clash. So there's people that are more akin to or aligned with celestials and lighter magic, things not like demonology or necromancy, and the two of them clash. But for the most part, they're both very well accepted across pretty much everywhere.
And then the purpose: sorcerers support kingdoms and noble houses with a variety of troubles. Many also connect demons with the mortal plane. Demons want to get over to the mortal plane desperately. Lilith talks about this in depth. You'll also see a couple of the teachers and students with demons of their own.
Like who? Here.
Like who? The bird, Mabori. This is actually one of my favorite familiars and one of my favorite teachers, actually. Without them, they wouldn't be able to exercise the amount of control that they have over the world. I think it's also really interesting what the relationship looks like between the demons and the mortals and how they basically trade for their power. So they both get something out of it.
Scrolling up a bit. Everyone's watering the bird and they all die.
Yeah.
An iron will, unquenchable intelligence, and emotional stability. You only get to pick 2. I like how in most stories MC is seeking power, but in Sahira she's actively seeking control because the power she's got is from. Thank you, Sneaky. Thank you. I like that too. It's fun to explore. Like you can absolutely use that in your own magic system if you have a character that has no idea what they're doing with it and they have like all of this energy or can access mana, and all of a sudden like they don't know how to control it. I think that's a really cool way to go instead of just I am here breaking the system and casting the biggest spell that I possibly can. That was so easy. Yay. Jack! Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for the follow, Supernova. Welcome in. We are doing a workshop on creating a magic system, and we are chatting about the stories that Raya and I write. So you get to know a little bit of our stories. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, so we'll move on to my newest project, Necromancer. The source is Scarlet. It's an encompassing energy that seeped into the world after an invasive battle. So the short version of the story is there was a battle between the people of Arbeon and a group called Otherworlders. And after the dust settled and the battle was over, Scarlet seeped into the world and at an alarming rate to the point where there was no way to get it under control. So it has seeped into everything, and people have, over time, learned how to use it.
The word that skipped was multiplied. They've multiplied it at an alarming rate. I can hear the lag, so at least I can know. Yeah. So they multiplied at an alarming rate. The limitations on the system is that it is extremely unpredictable. So it makes people sick after they use it. Spells don't always cast, and then sometimes they'll resolve internally, producing catastrophic results. So you try and cast a fireball and it never leaves your arm, and yeah, that's a fun way to go.
It's a very new magic. People are still learning how to get it under control. They're still not sure what it is they're actually looking at or controlling. So it's producing very unpredictable results. So there's a lot of people who are scared to use it, and those who actually learn from it usually die. And then the cultural impact. Scarlet is predominantly used for long-range elemental spells. It has a tendency to be used for dubious purposes. The religious order does not approve of Scarlet in any shape or form. Uh, since it is a remnant of an invading force from another world, they are convinced that anybody who uses the Scarlet must have some sort of association with those other worlders. So it's created a lot of tense situations for those who were simply born with the ability to manipulate Scarlet, and what the church thinks of those people.
So, with Sneaky was saying that the people who have no real learning tend to burn themselves out. Scarlet's like a newer thing in your world, right? So people who have it are still kind of experimenting with it across the board.
Exactly. Yeah, they're still experimenting with it. They're still learning it.
So it's kind of along the same lines where it's like, you're going to try something and you're going to pray.
Boy, I sure hope this doesn't blow my arm off.
And then the purpose of Scarlet is those who can use Scarlet are able to heal wounds that would normally be fatal. It's the optimal way to fight off the Scarlet beasts that are in the world, and then it provides a political and religious intrigue to the story. So it weaves into various different sections of his narrative.
Yeah, so hilariously enough, Scarlet is as much necessary for fighting the fighting off the evil of the world as it is for protecting. So the Scarlet that bled into the world has had a lot of effects, not just on the people, but the plants, the soil, the animals. Things have changed over time. And the things that get altered by Scarlet are usually referred to as Scarlet Beasts. They're usually very powerful, mystical kinds of creatures. And a lot of times the best way to fight off those kinds of creatures is also to use Scarlet.
And then the last system I'm going to talk about is Ophelia PI. So unfortunately, I'm not writing these books anymore, which is kind of a bummer. But I wanted to bring this one up because it's more modern setting where you see a lot of magic in like medieval Renaissance fantasy. I did not know the Dresden Files existed until after I wrote this first book, and then someone was like, "But have you read the Dresden Files?" And I started reading, and I'm like, "Well, shit." No, I'm not. The Lockhavens are actually taking it back over, and they're gonna control it because they want faster releases, which I totally understand. So they're gonna be working on it from here. I know. I'm sorry. There'll still be a second book that I wrote like the first half of, and then I think that he's gonna write the other half, and all of the short stories and stuff for me. But I get it. I get it. But anyway, circling back around. So in Ophelia, the source is internal. So each witch, wizard, fae, vampire, otherwise has their own magical energy to utilize, and they have their own pools to pull from. Everyone's different based on who they are, where they came from, and their capacity for magic. Oh, Steele, I'm glad. That's wonderful. Thank you.
For limitations, there are very few circles of magical beings in the world. They are often persecuted by average humans, so spells must be small and difficult to trace. Witches all have an elemental affinity with one single element. So it kind of takes more inspiration from witch hunts, burning at the stake, the kind of traditional witches and wizards that we're used to seeing through history.
So basically, it takes place in 1950s Cicero, Illinois, and the Ophelia, who's our titular character, and her best friend Renee have started a circle in Cicero, and any magical being can join the circle and they fall under their protection. These ladies have lived for a long time and watched the Salem witch trials, so they've seen how people react to magic and the thought of witches, and they just want to make sure that everyone stays safe. So the limitations earlier, like I was saying, with people like just normal humans persecuting the magic users, is a really great and easy limitation to make sure that your main character or the characters around them are not blowing up buildings. And if they are, then you need to get them taken care of immediately. Yeah, if they overstep, then it's going to be answered very, very quickly. And that's echoed in the cultural impact. So often feared by humans, Ophelia and Renee work together to keep their magical circle out of the public eye. Renee even goes so far as to erase memories if needed to make sure that, like, since she's a detective, she often works with the police. And if, like, a police officer they have one police officer who's a magic user on the force, but if another police officer sees something that they're not supposed to, then Renee can actually, like, wipe their memory of that event and make sure that no one talks about it.
Lastly, the purpose of the system was created around 1950s technology. Wanted to add a fantasy flair to the cozy mystery genre. I actually think that's a lot of fun because the 1950s it's when technology is starting to boom a little bit, but it's still very limited. So cameras are just starting to come into being. Long forms of communication is still in its infancy. I personally liked it a lot.
I really enjoyed it because there were no cell phones, no GPS tracking. So in one of them, I could make it where she has a spell that, like, at least tracked where the last person went to. It took a lot of prep time to get there, but, like, I could kind of be creative in, oh, well, they don't have that. They have to hop on a payphone. She has to do this. And it made for just a more interesting story. And when I was told that I would be writing cozy mystery, I'm not allowed to curse or mention blood or show gore on screen. And I'm like, I'm going to need something to make this interesting. So I made
murder.
There's murder, but don't you dare say damn. Not once. Please don't. That's offensive. All right. Next and last. You must break your magic system.
You must break it. Okay, it's time to number crunch and create the ultimate build in your established world. Here are some of our own examples. With Everyone's a Cat Girl, we started with what sounds fun and exciting. How will this spell, skill, class help the group? And we limit as necessary, but keep the identity, like Berserkers forsake hunger and forsake thirst. So since I developed this system for Everyone's a Cat Girl, I'll kind of go into this a little bit. So I think what's really important with any kind of system, particularly if you're going to go into a lit RPG where it's got game-like elements to it, fun should be at the forefront of your mind. What sounds fun? What sounds cool? What sounds exciting? Get that stuff down on paper first, then trim it once you get it all down. Because I think that's the crux of things, is you always want interesting interactions. It's like, okay, I'm presented with this complex problem. How can I use my abilities to problem solve for it? Which I'll spoil slightly for some of you. Berserker is a third class in the story, and they have two skills called Forsake Hunger and Forsake Thirst. They do exactly what they sound like they do. However, it does not eliminate the need for these things. It simply removes the effect that they have on you. So you simply do not feel the effects. Your body is still going to suffer for it. So, for example, the example I like to use is, there are some kinds of people who can't feel pain. Just because you put your hand on a burner doesn't mean you're not burning. You just don't feel it. Same concept here.
Yeah, like Han said, think of the worst mid-max or power gamer you know, get into that headspace. Luckily, Ryan and I are the worst mid-max power gamers we know, so it's very easy.
We are terrible with it. We are total tryhards.
Like, it's very easy for us to catch magic ideas and skills and spells and go, okay, so why wouldn't you do this? Like, if somebody has mind-reading powers, why wouldn't they just go read everyone's minds and take over what they need to? Like, why are they in a small town doing nothing when they could be doing so much more with their time?
Because I am socially inept or something like that.
And it's okay to have ways in the story to break the system. For example, Yomi, like, surpasses the system a little bit on her own, and that makes for a really interesting plot device. So I think things like that are fine. It gets really bad with the power scaling aspect when you have the main character who goes in and immediately breaks it and then becomes total god mode and can't be killed ever again.
I just like Steelhouse comment. I don't need sleep. I feel fine. Dude, I'm over here. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, offset power with consequences. There should be some kind of consequence if you've got it. That way, add that limitation back so it draws you back and you're not overtaking everything. Stories get really boring once you hit maximum capacity of, all right, I now have God mode and I can take over the whole world and I'm just going to twiddle my thumbs. Like, okay, where to next?
The crux of any story is conflict, and it's hard to build conflict when the character is too powerful.
There's no conflict. There's no one that can stop him. I mean, eventually the bodies will stop. All right, so in Necromancer, this is his story, but I'm going to talk anyway. He created fatal consequences that make users far more careful when casting. So like we said earlier with you could cast a spell and then like your arm explodes or it could kill you because it didn't work correctly, that kind of thing, right? Right. And then spells are limited to the amount of scarlet that's in the area. So scarlet pools in just specific areas, like maybe this forest has way more scarlet than the roadside. But if you pull the scarlet that's in the area and you use it all, then that's it. You can't cast any more spells. It's over. And then to prevent scarlet users from pouncing on one another just randomly, those who can manipulate scarlet can feel the scarlet shifting and depleting, warning them that there's another caster nearby. So that way they can't get taken off guard, and then like we're down to just one scarlet caster because the rest were killed from the sneaky tactics.
Still says, I think as a general rule, the ability to break the system should be there for others except the main character of the story. Obviously there are nuances to this, and if the story calls for it, then breaking the MC can be meaningful for a short moment. It depends. Yeah, you have to be very careful with that. You can definitely break the system at some points, as long as you have some form of consistency within mind. That's a very careful line you have to tread, because it can turn into a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, it can, and you have to be careful. Watch like the rule of cool. The rule of cool is totally fine if you want to do something cool and include it, but just make sure it fits in the story and doesn't come off like, oh, I just put it here because I wanted to. Like, make it make sense. Like Sneaky said, that's the problem with the most numbers go up stories. Once your numbers are bigger than anyone else, you lose urgency. Yeah, exactly.
Diamond, there was a trope I noticed in some anime where a character pulls out a gun and starts ignoring the magic system. Do you think that is a good way to break the system? No. So, and the reason being is that if guns exist, then everyone should be aware that they exist. So they should be prepared for them. Because the thing is, people are going to use whatever method is easier to keep themselves alive. They're not going to purposely pursue a technique that is far more complicated and nuanced when something simpler and easier could solve the same problem. So it's funny when you think about it, when it's like, oh yeah, you're working with this complex magic system and I just pull out a gun. Well, the complex magic system should have accounted for the gun, because the thing is, what do they call that? Necessity is the mother of invention. If you have a need for something, you're going to find a tool or technique to solve that issue. So if somebody knows magic and they're not using a gun for some reason, well, there must be a reason they're not using magic. So if somebody pulls out a gun, then they should be prepared for it, reasonably.
That circles back to Dresden Files, like we were saying earlier. He carries a gun with him at all times, and he is also a wizard, but he understands that sometimes, like, it's not worth it to sit there and cast magic forever when he could just pull the gun and end something. So, like Chocobo was saying, lowest effort solutions will be the most likely. So whatever is going to be the lowest effort in the moment, yes, absolutely, someone's going to pull a gun instead. I also agree with Rai that whoever they're facing should be accounting for the gun and understand that it is there. So unless, like, it shouldn't be a surprise that someone has a gun instead.
In a world with guns, magic will find a way to counter it. Alchemy to transmute the powder, fire magic to repress the ignition, something. Exactly. Yeah, they're going to find some sort of technique. Where when that gun comes out, it's like, no, I'm ready. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, like Ophelia carries a gun too, and I'll talk about it in a second, but like you're usually in a world with guns, there will be something to counter guns, especially if you have magic. Alright, so breaking Sahira.
Alright, you take care of it.
Yeah, weaving all of the arts together needed so much balancing. There are 9 arts, and they are all independent of one another, so I had to make sure that every single one of them was kind of on the same playing field at some point. So one of them may seem more powerful than another, but they all have their benefits and drawbacks. So for example, demons require pacts to cross the wall, so you can't just summon a demon without actually having a pact. Oh my goodness! Hello, Coffee, thank you! Welcome in! How was your stream? We are doing a writing workshop on creating a magic system. Thank you for the raid! Thank you, thank you, thank you! Yes! We are talking about breaking our own systems. And for anyone new, we are double blinds, both of us, and one. And if you need to go and teach English or relax, please go. Thank you so much for the raid. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for the raid. Very much appreciate you. Glad to see you all. But yeah, take care of yourself. Go do what you need to do, okay?
We love writers and writer friends. Those are the best. Welcome, guys. Welcome, welcome. Yep, break your own system, then fix it. Powerful is good, unstoppable less so. So yeah, with Sahira, you've got to have a pact for a demon. High-level alchemy requires really rare ingredients, so you're not just going to be throwing together the best potions in the world without finding and sourcing the ingredients first. Hexes need perfect pronunciation and can be easily broken if you have somebody that you're casting on that's very knowledgeable on hexes, because they will figure out whatever the counter hex is. You have things like Fate and Arcana, which affect turns of your destiny, and everyone, like, if you're a magic user, you can access that and kind of fiddle with it a little bit. It's very difficult, though. Even spellcraft has, like, you usually have an elemental affinity and just one, and everything else is going to be way less powerful. So everything kind of has a counter to it, just to make sure that it doesn't go out of power scaling, and it's not just, oh yeah, well, one person is really good at spellcraft, so he's going to take over the rest of them. Like, I wanted to make sure, or I can summon this demon to take over the world. Like, it needed to not go that direction.
As a super quick side note, just because I noticed what Shiniki said, break your own system, then fix it, powerful is good, unstoppable less so. Whenever you're creating a system, just as a side note, just think to yourself, how would I break this? Because if you can come up with it, somebody else will. You should assume that the characters in your story are intelligent enough to also have the same train of thought.
Exactly. Like, go up against other people that understand it and not just, yep, this is the lord of the system. And then lastly with Ophelia, so every single spell I had to examine under the lens of, could that have solved this case at the beginning? I had to be so careful not to give her a spell that was like, well, you know, if this just led you to the person, why didn't you just go pick up some hair or fingerprints or something at the very beginning and like throw that in a bowl and mix it around, and it should have brought you there. So I had to scale those back to like, what can I do to make sure that this is helping, but it's not helping too much. And then a lot of her spells required setup and cooldown. So speaking of guns, she did carry a gun. She also had a spell that you could prepare in advance. Like, you just have to do it outside of combat, essentially, that would reflect exactly one projectile. And then after that, you couldn't do it for another 24 hours. So then that way, like, if she got into a gunfight, it was still tense and there was still some urgency there, instead of just like, she could just walk into a building and everyone's firing at her and like, yeah, it doesn't hit her and that's way cool, but that's so much power. Like, she was not allowed to have that much power. Then yeah, if she's ambushed, that makes the situation scary, because she hasn't set that up. Like, she wasn't expecting the ambush. So you don't want to completely destroy your conflict, like Raya was saying, because if you do, then no longer will you have anything interesting. You'll just have a walking bullet shield with the all powerful magic of creation. It doesn't get very exciting after that. And remember, everybody, your story is awesome. There's always, always, always an audience. Please write it. Please. There are people who will read it.
Always write what you're passionate about. I have found that in the vast majority of cases, if you write what you're passionate about, there's going to be somebody who picks up that passion. Your story is awesome, so please, please write it.
Ah, yes, the shard plate. One guy is immune to all damage. One dude walks into all of the army and just wipes them clean. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a bit of a problem with that. Anywho, does anybody have any questions? Because at this point, the panel is over. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about, you have any sort of questions, concerns, or comments, we are all ears.
Even if it's on your own magic systems, if you had questions on your own magic system. Thank you so much, Candace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candace.
We stopped dropping frames in there, so that was good. If you guys think of questions, I'm just going to run an ad really quick to keep the pre-rolls off and refill my water. And I will be back very, very quickly.
Same here. Okay, I am back before she is. I'll let her give her own opinion on this question too, but I will tell you how I would approach it for Candace. How do you deal with massive power creep when you've already committed too far and it's past the point of retconning it? Instead of just throwing gods at your godlike character, what would you end up doing? Do you break it backwards, find a way to min his max? So something that I make a habit of doing whenever I create any system is I start at the top. So I know this kind of doesn't answer your question a little bit, but to avoid running into that problem in the first place, I start at the very top. I think, okay, what does the upper echelon of this system look like? What does a person with perfect mastery and access to every ability do? What are they capable of? And then I kind of work my way down from there so that the character never reaches that point. If you have unfortunately reached that point already, at that point it depends on the context of your story. It depends on its culture, its world, its rules. That's not an easy question to answer, unfortunately, because unless I know what your gods look like, what your magic system looks like, what your system looks like, I can't really gauge how I would not retcon it, but min his max, basically, like you said.
I feel like I would throw someone more powerful at them, like another person, not a god. Don't throw a god in, but somebody else who's maybe figured out the system.
Like he said his character's godlike.
Yeah, his character is godlike, but there's got to be a weakness somewhere. I would figure out a flaw. Like, if there's something very wrong, and you really need to break him back down, then I would figure out a chink in the armor somewhere.
Some sort of flaw.
That can be broken by another person, and not necessarily just throw gods at it, but like throw something else. Like, I don't remember what we were talking about, but we had brought up a character similar to that where if a character was that powerful, I would still hope that, at least a group of people could rally together and take them out somehow, instead of just like, oh, I'm walking across a field and murdering millions. We've seen that. We've seen a lot of that. But if it's too far gone, then yeah. And the biggest problem, I think, with that, though, is once you bring them back, you're kind of back to like the same power creeping scale that you were before. So I agree with Rye that the best thing you can do is try and prevent it from happening to begin with. Because once you...
Exactly, because once you hit that point, even if you drop him down, you know that he can reach that point again.
Yeah, it's like, it's the same crawl to get back to that point. Like, all right, so I have made it to God mode. I have been brought down from God mode. Now I'm going to make it back to God mode and try and get all the same skills. So the other option would be to isekai that motherfucker somewhere else and start over. Okay, Hand asked, how do you reconcile magic being taught in a school between the main characters facing problems at their level versus the eldest powerful wizards being able to wave a hand to solve it? I'm trying to figure out, I reread this question like 3 times, and reconcile how? Like
reconcile how different the experiences between them?
Yeah, I mean, because you're focusing, when you're writing a story, you're pretty much focusing on one character the whole time, or even a couple of characters. So where are the elder wizards coming in here? Like, where...
Well, also that depends on a couple of factors too. Like, taking Sahira as an example, Mobori made a little bit of a mistake with Sahira when he tried to enhance her hearing. Despite being pretty much a master of his craft, he still made a mistake of some kind. I do feel like knowledge and experience is what should separate the students from the masters, and not power levels, essentially. So none of this Dumbledore shit where he can somehow create a giant water snake and a big fireball out of nowhere, and nobody's ever seen this spell before. I don't want to see stuff like that. But something that says to the reader and says to the student, hey, if I follow A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, then I can attain the same mastery that my teacher has.
I don't know if we're answering your question, though, because, like, again, using Sahir as an example, I'm focused on her, like, the whole story, and the professors are there if she is in the vicinity, like when her orb exploded and one of the shards, like, went into her hand, Galloway quickly drops the rest of the shards to the floor and then healed her up, but it still really affected her, and she's still struggling to, like, pull her energy. So I'm not at any point, like, switching to Gallowwood and then looking from that point of view. Is that what you mean? Like, actually going back and forth between student and professor? Like, what are you trying to get to? What's the goal at the end? Yeah, the powerful wizards are busy. They're teaching and then they're going off and leaving their own lives, so... More so conflicts being solved by weak characters versus professors waving hand and solving it. I mean, not all conflicts are going to be solved by the professors, especially when you're in a school situation and you have teenagers who are fighting. They're not really going to bring professors into it very often.
And they can't be everywhere every second.
Yeah, they're they're not seeing everything that's happening in the school. So yeah, it could be something that's solved very easily. Like Sahira being hexed would be solved really easily by a professor, but if they're not sticking around and looking, then they're not going to know. So it's whatever your focus is on at the moment. Inky said most of these streams tend to leave to lots of notes, but this time I ended developing a magic system in real time. The gears just insisted on turning. Your guidance made so many concepts clear. I suppose it's hands-on. That's awesome, Inky! Yay!
I am so glad to hear that. Oh, good. I'm glad our guidance could help you. I'm really glad to hear that.
I was musing that there are known tropes and norms for magic as an audience knowledge, but they redefined authentic imaginations of new stories. The differences are the spices that make the fun. Yeah, there's a lot of differences and things you can play with, and that's what makes it interesting. The other wizards learned to learn somehow. Maybe they started in the school. Just because you learn the basics doesn't mean you know the expert.
There's merit to the reason why so many powerful gods get chained or locked away because they're too impactful. If your character gets to the point of being that powerful, does their viewpoint on humanity change? Someone that powerful could very well become a problem that people need to solve, even if the character thinks they are in the right. So that's a fun concept you can go with as well. So answering the Candace's question a second time, I suppose, is you can take that in a fun narrative style where perhaps the character has been working up to this point of godhood, and once he has attained it, perhaps he has a negative view on humanity, perhaps he has a negative view on gods, perhaps he wants to remake the world in some way. And then the narrative can shift to somebody else. And suddenly the character you've built up is the villain. So there are some other ways around it. Narratively speaking, I actually kind of like Still's idea there.
So a really great example of that actually is the Count of Monte Cristo. So
It is.
Edmond Dantes gets more money than God and pretty much controls like all of Paris thanks to all of his money. And by the second half of the book, he has an intense God complex where he looks at everybody else like pawns as just players in his game. So it's such an interesting change in his thought process because he doesn't start that way at all. So absolutely a person that has so much magic that they can just control everything on humanity or even in their like just vicinity, that can change their mindset. They could see and think that they're more powerful than everybody else, and that will also help create more conflict with their surroundings.
Students learning calculus for the first time struggle to see the solution, while a professor sees the method and answer easily. Experience is valid and impactful. That's 100% correct. Experience, practice, knowledge, all of those aspects are going to be very, very important when closing the bridge, closing the gap between student and teacher.
The other thing is the teachers are there to teach, so yeah, they can fix it by waving a hand and calling it good, but what the heck is the student going to learn from that? Like they can't force the student to learn these things and like force them to understand and start feeling it out. Like magic, I feel like magic in almost every version that I have read or written is always a very personal experience. So it's not something that somebody can come up and just be like, here, yeah, snap your fingers and that's it. You've created life. Like there's a lot more to go through, and I think that's a really important part.
Wasn't that simple?
Yeah.
Question. I have seen several manhwa that spend the first few chapters explaining how magic works in the world, sometimes even before introducing characters. What is your take on that? I don't like that. That's what I think of that. We are very character-driven writers. It's actually a big reason why her and I just do not like Lord of the Rings at all. It spends way too much time spending 30 pages talking about the different varietals of weed located in this fictional world than just letting me get attached to the characters. We're not huge fans of that. A simple prologue at the beginning, like 3, 4, 5 pages, you can even do an entire chapter really to kind of just, ease me into the world, kind of give me a feel for the general gist of what's going on. Perfectly fine. I'm good with that. In fact, I prefer that. But if you're going to spend that much time explaining the world to me, I check out very quickly. However, I have noticed a trend that a lot of people actually like that. You know, Lord of the Rings is popular for a reason, and Lord of the Rings does a lot of that. So there is merit to that. In cases like that, I think it's more preference on the reader than it is like an actual good or poor technique.
Yeah, and even if you're doing a prologue kind of showing off what your magic system does it do it in a way that matters to the story? Like, I think that the Wheel of Time's prologue is great in how it opens and shows off the magic that's going to come up. I think that the Way of Kings has a really great prologue to show that we've got shard blades going around and kind of what's happening in the background. So there's ways to put it in your narration that's not just like step 1 of casting fireball and then it just goes into it with no real connection to the world. It's more like a tutorial manual for a game than it is an actual story. So that's my take. LeMay asked on YouTube, how do you feel about a power system where those in higher positions gatekeep and exploit lower ranked members seeking mentorship and jobs? I think that works fine. Especially, it just depends on what your society and your culture looks like. Also, a power system that requires money, prestige, and connections more so than the talent and hard work. I kind of have that going on with Sahira, which is why they give Sahira so much shit. So it's definitely a system that works. It just kind of depends with your magic. Like, are the people who can access the magic that are in those lower systems, can they overtake the higher ones? Why can't they overtake the higher ones? Why can't they sneak their way in and pretend to be higher up? Especially if they can show off the same or better powers than the people in higher positions.
I was going to ask that as well, as far as magic potential is concerned. If money and prestige is more important than magical ability, then it's only a matter of time before somebody with exceptional magical ability tries to force their way in. And there's a good chance that they could disguise themselves, kill a few people in on the way. There are precedents for things like that in our very own history of people breaking into places where they should not be.
Yeah, so that's like, and with a magic system, it really depends on how powerful and what you're planning to do with it. But that kind of system works totally fine. It works really well. Let's see. Was literally just thinking of Wheel of Time's prologue with the dragon man in a castle he destroyed. That prologue lives in my head rent-free. It's a great freaking prologue. I find it uninspired when a story stakes are always escalated to saving the whole world, requiring a god mode. What level of power is needed to solve the story's crisis? As the author, you choose the limit of power needed to meet the demands of the story. Yeah, I agree. Even when we were coming up with Dynamis's summary with Rai, he had at the end it said like, humanity is on the brink, or like the world is going to be destroyed, and I'm like, nah, that's too big. We gotta narrow it down to what is happening in the immediate vicinity right now, and like what are the problems right now, because we have not reached like the world is dying mode. So I think it's really important to bring that down a bit.
Sneaky says, I try to limit my data dumps to a character, learning it, reading it in a book, observing it, being told it something. You introduce the concept and move on, not 2 or 3 paragraphs on data dumping. That's my preferred way to do it as well. It feels more natural. It feels more like you're weaving the reader into the narrative, and they're learning us alongside the character. I think that's a huge reason why Sahira is so much fun to read, is because I feel like I'm learning next to her. Like I feel like I'm her classmate. So whenever she feels something, whenever she learns something, it's like, oh, cool. And then, you know, regardless of like what direction Sahira is going in, I think, oh, you know what? After seeing all the classes she went through, I think I'd focus on like spellcraft and necromancy, or I'd focus on fate and arcana, because I'm a sucker for the astrology aspect of things. You know, something along those lines. So I agree with you fully that that's typically a better way to do it, because it feels more organic. We learn alongside the character.
I didn't get a chance to shout out Yunsu. That's not it. I need to put a shout out there. There we go. And then that's him, right? Did I get the right person? No, I didn't. Hang on. Coffee Quills did, but I need to get the right guy. Yunsu Official is his name. My bad. Don't follow that guy. I don't know who that guy is. Okay. There we go. Follow Yunsu Official and Coffee Quills, who are awesome to rate us. There we go. And yeah, Sahira is completely free to read. There's 3 extra chapters over on Patreon, but I threw the link up. And I'm very flattered that you guys are so interested in it and have enjoyed it so much, and I love it. So thank you.
Kind of jumping off slightly of what Sneaky said too, because Inky mentioned info dumping as part of a narrator or character is okay to make it a personality trait. Yeah, so for example, you could say, oh, you know, he was really focused on channeling his energy into this orb. And then the narration explains that he's nervous about it because if he pours too much or too little, X, Y, or Z could happen. And when X, Y, or Z happens, A, B, and C happens. So that's a nice, easy way to weave in some explanations while they're concentrating or doing whatever it is they're doing.
Jack said part of why isekai is so popular gives an excuse to explain things to the character and the story without just info dumping it. It is, yeah, absolutely. That's part of what makes it very, very, very popular because it's easy to do that for writers. Like, oh, nope, I got a new guy right here. I absolutely adore reading books, though, where the world and the characters are lived in and we're just kind of hopping into wherever they're starting and this is what's happening now. So I think it's important to be able to do both. Like, find a way to have your main character in a new conflict and still show off the world and its rules, and as well as like having a new character in a new place.
I've said it a few times before and I'll say it again. That's... I'm not going to call it lazy because it's not, but those kinds of scenarios like isekai, it does provide the writer a really easy out for explaining how everything works. It sounds natural. It comes off really easy. You know, we do it in Everyone's a Cat Girl. So whenever Matt's got a question or something like that, you know, the Cat Girls, they kind of try to explain it in their own way. And then Matt just kind of goes, yeah, okay, that's fine. I don't need the tutorial, and moves on. Depending on just, you know, what your character's goals are, you may not need as much explanation as the average person uses, but yeah, it does provide an easy avenue.
Hilariously, with Trails and Snails, Sky's one request of me was, I don't want to do the whole isekai upfront bullshit. I want him to have been there for like a year. So it was really fun to start with Jack, like already having been in this world for a year and finding ways to insert things for the reader to kind of get up to speed with everything that was going on. But it felt so good to just have it be lived in and not have to do the whole experience all from the beginning. And oh, what's this? Oh, who's that? Oh my God, Snail Girls. Oh, what is this system? Why do I have levels? Where am I? I get so tired of those questions, man. Also, hi Lumberjack. Thank you so much for stopping in.
Hello, Lumberjack. Yeah, it's been really, really refreshing with Dynamis and Necromancer to be like, no, these characters know how this world works. They know what the religion looks like. They know how the magic works. I can take my time with this. I can explain in my own way. I don't have to sit there and go, well, I can't believe you didn't know that. So Miana is a source of... Yeah, I don't have to do all that.
Yeah, In Media Res just felt so good. I was just gonna go. Jack said people have written fish out of water, but is anyone brave enough to write water out of fish?
Just take the water straight out of the fish. Dry it up.
Squeeze it like a tube of toothpaste. You have to explain this to him. He's not from here. No, thanks, but I know how a toilet works. Thank you. And yes, you can show instead of tell. You can always show instead of tell. water out of fish is whale. You should explain again. I didn't catch any of that. Lucky for you, there's going to be a VOD. I'll post it for you, and you can watch it from the very beginning.
Hooray!
Are there any more questions before I go make the disgusting sap that is my sugar glider's food? Story's not done until you explain how the complex city sewer network
Oh my
works.
god, fucking kill me.
Yeah, sugar gliders eat. So it's a mix of, it's called wombaroo powder, and then honey, and bee pollen, and water. And the problem is hard-boiled eggs. So the hard-boiled eggs, when you blend them, smell awful. Like, it smells like there's poison in my house. Good night, LeMay. Thank you so much for hanging out. So whenever I blend it, I try not to gag, but it's very hard. But they love the sugar. Sugar glider cam wouldn't work. You would just see a cage with pouches because they're not awake until usually around 11:30 at night.
Yeah, that's never gonna happen. Unfortunately, you guys won't be able to see them.
I take as many pictures as I can, but they're 100% nocturnal, and it's impossible. Like, I take them out for their pouch time and stuff during the day, but they just sleep.
So, working on modern fiction, people who can feel and manipulate magic are rare, in part because magic is very tangible. You are warping reality and it will rebound back to you. So most mages do small spells, not because big spells are impossible, but because they have a tendency to kill the caster. Reasonable limitation. Absolutely. So I work with a similar limitation with Scarlet. Not quite to what you're talking about, because what you're talking about sounds more hard, sounds more scientific. Like, when this happens, this happens. But I have a similar concept with Scarlet, with them not knowing how it works fully, so sometimes it's a big risk whenever they try to cast a spell, but they take that chance anyway. I think you can make something like that work really, really well. If you can come up with a few ideas for how they might be able to counter how it rebounds, whether with another spell, an object, or otherwise. It's hard to say, just on the face. But I personally think a spell like a magic system like that would be very interesting. Because it basically becomes a how much are you willing to pay in order to make sure that this sort of thing goes off. In a way, it kind of feels like Full Metal Alchemist almost, where it's just like there must be equal payment in order to make the spell work. God, can you imagine how exhausted a person would be if they had to cast a spell every hour or they died? You'd never have any sleep.
I was gonna say, how would you sleep? You would just die from no sleep. You would go mad.
Well, Sneaky, it sounds like the amount of people who would be able to do that would not only be limited because they're rare, but because they've killed themselves so many times. So a person who is older and actually knows some magic would be extremely frightening because they actually have a very good control over perception and intention. I think you could make that work. I think that would be a very fun system.
All right. We are going to call it here. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging out. I'm glad to hear that it was helpful, that you guys got notes, that some of you actually created a whole magic system, which is freaking awesome. You are wonderful. Thank you for the raids. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the thoughts.
Oh, and just so that somebody has it for the future, because my little face is in front of...
Oh, it's just Linktree.
Yeah, the link tree.
Ta-da.
There we go. Cool. Woo! Yeah, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your time here. I'm really glad that our information could help you. Again, we're always here to help. Feel free to reach out to us in Discord. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
You're welcome, and we love you to pieces, and we will talk to you soon. Please have a wonderful night.